Under the Make in India initiative, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has launched the country's greatest economic reforms. In part 1 of the Make in India report, we went over the labor laws, land acquisition legislation, as well as the tax regimes, which Modi needs to adjust to increase foreign direct investment in India. Yet economies run on energy. As India's economy expands, it will have to seek for new sources of energy. Moreover, an equally daunting challenge awaits the country's agricultural and services sector. In part 2 of the Make in India report, we will go over these crucial components which will determine the success of the economic reforms. My name is Shirvan and welcome to Caspian Report. Since gaining independence in 1947, India somewhat failed to industrialize its economy. In the 1950s and 1960s, the government made a series of poor decisions that established the traditional planned economic model known as the License Raj. As an indirect result of the economic policy, most of the country's population remained employed in the agricultural sector. Then in the 1990s, oil prices spiked due to the Iran-Iraq war, and suddenly New Delhi's energy bill skyrocketed and its foreign exchange reserves plummeted. As a result of the economic crisis, India sought a loan from the IMF. The loan-related austerity measures forced India to open up its economy. Following this, the manufacturing sector as well as the services sector grew remarkably. Currently, the agricultural sector employs 49% of the nation's 502 million labor force. It's the biggest source of jobs in the country, but it only accounts for 14% of the economy, whereas the services sector employs 31% of Indians and it's responsible for 54% of the country's GDP. This contradiction is the result of the License Raj policy. Now, the decision to open up the economy is catching up with tremendous consequences. For instance, most Indians working in the agricultural sector lack a higher degree of education, which is required for the services sector. Thus, as employment in the agricultural sector will diminish, many displaced semi-skilled people will seek for work in the manufacturing sector. And this will depend on Indian policymakers as they struggle to reform the labor legislations, land acquisition laws, as well as the tax regimes. We went over these issues in the previous Caspian report. The necessity for legal reforms will only increase over time, especially as new technologies develop. For example, precision agriculture, also known as satellite farming, will have a profound impact on the Indian economy and its labor force. Basically, precision agriculture entails the use of data to improve agricultural output. Think of automated tractors, soil monitoring by satellites and UAVs, and more. The real-time collected data, such as soil moisture and nitrogen content, allows for farmers to reduce operation costs and cultivate more products with fewer acres of land. The technology still needs to develop and fine-tune for agricultural operations. However, the Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International forecasts that by 2035, the precision agricultural sector could be responsible for 80% of commercial drone use. Presently, India is exploring its options of precision agriculture. However, given the fact that nearly half of India's labor force is employed in the agricultural sector, satellite farming will result in a steadily increasing unemployment in the agricultural sector, meaning in just 2 decades' time, India will see millions of semi-skilled people seeking for employment in the manufacturing sector. Ultimately, this means that the Make in India initiative is not just an ambitious project, it's a necessary one. Besides new technologies, India must also formulate its energy security for the coming decades. Economies run on energy, and as urbanization and industrialization increases, so too will India's appetite for energy grow. At the present, India consumes almost 3.7 million barrels of oil per day, yet it only produces about 760,000 barrels per day. The rest is imported. However, as the manufacturing sector grows and more people move to the cities to work, New Delhi must acquire new sources of energy. For instance, the UN estimates that between 2014 and 2050, about 400 million Indians will move to the cities. As a result, by 2040, consumption will increase to 10 million barrels per day. Aside from new energy sources, the government must also formulate a security plan. Reliance on hydrocarbon energy carries risks. For example, if suddenly oil prices spiked, then a repeat of the 1990s economic crisis would hit India. In preparation for such a scenario, the state-owned Oil and Natural Gas Corporation has been acquiring equity stakes in foreign oil fields. The idea is that if oil prices spike, then India would compensate by collecting the energy revenues of its overseas assets. This is actually a sound plan, and it provides India with some leverage concerning its energy security. Yet, interestingly enough, India has proven oil reserves of 5.7 billion barrels. That is enough to meet the needs of the Indian people for the coming years. However, over half of the oil is located offshore. To extract the oil, India needs the technology and expertise of foreign multinational oil companies. Yet, despite New Delhi's best efforts, most energy companies are not interested in Indian oil. This contradiction is linked to India's energy subsidies, which have helped the impoverished citizens but have also hurt foreign energy companies. The thing is, since New Delhi pays the companies only a partial reimbursement for the extracted oil, the oil companies barely make a profit. Essentially, the bureaucratic landscape undermines the domestic oil industry. As for the energy subsidies, these are linked to the internal politics. Considering these realities, no change is expected in the foreseeable future. India will continue to fail to increase its domestic oil output. But it's not just about hydrocarbon energy that will need to be expanded. As a result of the urbanization and industrialization, consumption of electricity will rise as well. Therefore, Modi is seeking to expand all types of energy production, especially the output of nuclear energy. Currently, India operates 22 nuclear power reactors, which generate 3.5% of the country's total electric output. As a result of its energy security, India wants to diversify the generation of energy. Nuclear energy will be a crucial component of that plan. By 2050, New Delhi plans to increase the share of nuclear energy to at least 25% of the total electric output. As of this moment, India is already constructing 6 new reactors, which should commence operations by 2017. Furthermore, to achieve its long-term goals, in 2014, Putin and Modi signed an agreement in which the state-owned nuclear energy company Rosatom expressed willingness to construct more than 20 new nuclear power units in India. However, to attract even more foreign investors in the nuclear sector, New Delhi must adjust the liability law. Currently, India's nuclear liability legislation holds the supplier rather than the operator directly responsible in the event of an accident. In almost every other country, the reverse is true. Due to the liability legislation, many Western as well as Japanese and Korean investors are reluctant to do business in India. Since adjusting legislations is a complicated matter in India, Modi is seeking for partners that are willing to work within the current parameters. In this context, Moscow fits the bill, and Russia will play an increasingly crucial role in the development of India's nuclear energy sector. All in all, India's growing energy appetite will have to be addressed through a combination of nuclear and hydrocarbon energy. The legal proceedings concerning the energy subsidies and nuclear liability acts will remain unchanged. As a matter of fact, the bureaucratic situation is actually far more complicated when one considers that India has separate energy ministries for coal, renewable energy, power, petroleum, and natural gas. These energy ministries compete for influence and power. What's more is that every Indian state has a different energy policy, just like its tax regimes. Ultimately, foreign companies are often confused with whom they are to do business. For this reason, India is a land of contradictions. It has tremendous potential, and the Make in India initiative is exactly what the country needs to lift its people from poverty and modernize its country. Yet, India's main obstruction is its complicated bureaucratic landscape, and given this reality, some of Modi's reforms will succeed, but others will eventually fail. This was a Caspian report by me, Shirvan. I want to thank the following people for their contributions on Patreon, and if you want to help with the costs of the show, visit our Patreon page in the description. For now, thank you for watching, take care and Sağ ol.